Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I want to cover the Moondancer trial on Paladin Healer. First of all, a massive thanks to all of the guys in my team here in getting us through the run. I believe R2 and also Aster have YouTube channels that you can also follow for their own gameplays. So here, let's cover the basics on what you need to do as a Paladin Healer, and that's how hard is your work here. To be honest, I think it's a little bit more active gameplay than you would have on other healers, because you have to respond a bit more with your abilities to what the enemies are doing. You can't just rely on heal over times. And you're very important in this trial. Okay, not vitally important, but still nonetheless very important. You can do the trial without a Paladin Healer. You can have a Warlock Shielder instead. But shields nonetheless are very useful in this trial, particularly for tanks who need to take those tank busters when you face the captain at the end phase. Now here, where it's just a whole lot of ads, yeah, there's not a whole lot you can be doing. I'll tab the tanks now and again, and otherwise it's a divine shelter for everybody else. Then you're just using your sacred weapon and your circle of divinity, and you get that divinity back, no problem at all. You do not need like the best build or anything. You can get through this no trouble. Of course, the better your build is, the more team support you can provide on top of getting some decent stats and giving some decent shields. The bigger the shields you give to people, the less likely they're going to die to, say, some one-shot. An ad can get combat advantage against you, teleport behind you, and if you're a squishy DPS, you could die. And you could have two ads jump on you at the same time, and then they'll kill you. And with a bit of extra hit points, you can survive. But I wouldn't blame yourself for every single death here. Sometimes a DPS will just get one shot, and that's kind of on them for drawing the attention of an enemy they can't deal with. Or it's on the tank for not having enough threat against that enemy. You can't save everybody from everything. They're going to die to one shots, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Just try and keep everybody at full HP, try keep everybody with a shield, and otherwise give the tanks a big shield when you know they're going to have to tank a big hit, like we will see when we go upstairs here. Now, your mark is going to give a whole bunch of that incoming healing to the target now. It's a whopping 15%. It's pretty crazy with Aura of Restoration. You're also giving everybody 10%. They really buff the heck out of that feature. But nonetheless, you can give some massive shields these days on terms of your tab, and that's what we're doing here for the tanks. You can see they're taking the snipe from the sniper. We give one of them a big shield, we go and give the next guy a big shield just before it hits, and they should tank that no problem. Again, that's not my fault there. The DPS just went in and died. That's one thing you learn in any of content here. If you play a tank, you learn the mechanics so much easier than any other role. Because as a tank, you're paying attention to your enemy and you're playing very reactively. You see what they do, you see what damage they're doing, you know when to block, you know when you don't need to, when to build threat, and to move accordingly based on what mechanics are happening. As a damage dealer, you can kind of just turn everything off and just kill everything, and then you just forget about mechanics, and then you switch to a healer and you're like, what are mechanics? And then it's a lot harder. I can totally get that. But again, from a tank perspective, you learn what needs healing, what mechanics deal damage, how the tanks want to be healed, and then yeah, you pay attention a lot more to what's actually happening. Ultimately, Paladin Healer here is pretty simple. You're just using Divine Shelter to give everybody shields, and you're just using Lay on Hands. The rest is just backup. Cure Wounds to give a little bit of like a top off if somebody really needs it. Usually if you're playing double heal, the other healer will have your back on that, topping everybody's hit points off because they won't have much else to do. Once everybody's got a shield, as soon as somebody loses a bit, the other healer's there to top them up, and then you'll be there giving them a shield again. Otherwise, you can be team support. So you have like Divine Fulmination, which is a single target power, which is considered multi-target. So you are literally the best person in the trial here to run the Vistani buff and the Grace Ring buff. They put debuffs on the enemy, make them get increased damage, and you can use this against those lieutenants even if there's ads around, because it's single target. You're just hitting one enemy, and it's considered multi-target, so it will trigger that effect on them. Versus anybody else who's going to have a multi-target power, they'll end up hitting some ad and then not triggering it. So that is one thing. You want to have that combination, Grace Ring and Vistani, and use that at will, ideally every 5 seconds on like a lieutenant or the captain, whoever everybody's targeting. I'm not the best at the uptime here, that's for sure. I believe actually this is like my first run on Paladin Healer. I never get to play Healer because everybody else wants to for some reason, and then I end up on tank or damage dealer most of the time as tank, because not a lot of tanks around, and tanks, you kind of got to pay a bit more attention to what's going on. And yeah, some people just like being damage dealers because it's fun. You're being a bit competitive against other players, and you have that thrill of trying to top the pain giver, and otherwise dealing damage can be quite chill. You aren't that vital to success, at least outside of like DPS checks. You just get through the run, kill everything. You have 5 other guys also dealing damage, so if you slack off a little bit, that's not a problem. Versus if you're a tank, you slack off a bit, you'll probably be dead, or you lose threat and you'll kill somebody else. As a healer, kind of same thing. You can't really turn off. You gotta be there, watching out when people take damage, watching when the tanks take damage. So here, when you're fighting the captain, as a Paladin Healer, you need to pay attention to your tank. If he's taking a lot of damage, give him a good old shield and a heal with your tab ability like we do here. But you also need to be very important. Pay attention when this tank buster happens. It just happened there. And you need to make sure you give a shield before that. It's like, the tanks shouldn't depend on it, but they do. They do, to be honest. These days, tanks have gotten pretty used to that tab shield being there. You're essentially nearly doubling their hit points. They can survive without it, but it's just far more safer to just be there, give them that big shield, and they'll be grateful for it. Like, we're critting the guy for 900,000. This build isn't even that great, and we're basically giving him like a 1.2 million shield then. There's another tank buster, and that's the thing. As playing a tank, you learn when this tank buster is happening. You learn the subtle movements and rotations of mechanics that the boss makes, so you know when the next tank buster is going to happen as well. It's like always after that stun when he lunges at you. And otherwise, if you want to get a timer, you can. It's 45 seconds up until 50% hit points of the boss, and then it becomes 30 seconds. However, the first tank buster he does can be a bit delayed. Some others can be a bit delayed as well, depending on rotation. So here you're basically balancing between using Divine Shelter to give everybody a shield and giving that tab on the tank. Always the most important thing here is that tab on the tank. If you need to make a decision between giving everybody shields or the tab on the tank, just give them that tab. Tab, I mean, is the Hand of Divinity there with the big shield. If you are running with a second healer, which most people do anyway, for buffs, for just extra heals, that person will top people off and you don't have to worry so much about them. Just give them a Divine Shelter every now and again, especially before the next ad wave comes in, because again, somebody can get jumped on by an ad who didn't get threatened by, let's say, the tank, and then they take a bunch of damage and they could die to it if they grab the attention of too many. But yeah, Paladin Healer here is really smooth to play. Just gotta pay attention to what's happening. Be aware of when the tank buster is going to happen. Be aware when the tanks are switching. You need to put your mark on the next guy, just like here. And then, yeah, you're giving them big shields. It can be a bit annoying here with those red areas. You got to be on your toes and move. You can't be sitting in them. You don't have enough stamina to tank like all of them always, so try and just move yourself a bit. Here again, he's going to take a tank buster. You can see like the sword glows. We give him a shield, and we can give him another shield afterwards, because the boss does deal quite a lot of damage. Be aware of that. It will depend on the tank though, of course, how much damage they take based on their stats. Some will take more than others, but your role is pretty much looking after the tanks. The other healer is going to keep everybody topped off, and that's about it, to be honest, providing their own buffs to the team, and you're just there backup for the tanks. But again, you can cast a Divine Shelter and give everybody a nice shield. Also, I'm forgetting here half the time to use Divine Fulmination. I do use it when there's nothing really else to do, but I could definitely be squeezing in more casts of those in between healing just to make sure to maintain those buffs, because I can nearly increase everybody's damage against a target of like over 10%. That's pretty huge. Again, here's another tank buster. We just about got our tab off before the guy got hit, and then we used our daily on that just because we wouldn't have had time to heal them up. But he probably could have used a potion or a stone and would have been fine, but better safe than sorry. And what am I using my daily power here anyway? Nobody needs my Shield of Faith, really. Maybe the tank could take it, but that's 5% damage reduction. I guess I'll give them a little bit of incoming healing. But yeah, you can just be better off. Just save it for lay on hands and give somebody a big heal if they need it. You also give them some extra shield. And yeah, ultimately, you should not have a problem here on Paladin Healer. It's one of the more chill classes to play. Of course, you will want to learn some mechanics. You want to know when to actually heal. You want to know what's actually going on. Like, you need to know when the next tank bust is going to happen so we can move over here, tab him, and then give him the shield. All before he takes the big hit. Unfortunately, we didn't get a crit. You do ideally want to have a decent high crit chance build so that you can more reliably get the crits on that tab. You don't want to be stuck like half the time not give him a crit shield and then have to redo it. Once the boss gets to 15%, everybody starts taking damage over time. This is when you're really just going to focus on healing everybody with Divine Shelter. If you're in a decent group, that phase will be gone by in the blink of an eye, and you won't have to do much healing. If you're on a lesser geared group or a less coordinated group, that might take a bit longer, and it's going to come to a point where you just can't heal anymore, and everybody's going to die. And you can't really blame yourself. You just got to blame everybody else, because they shouldn't have been damaging the boss when they weren't ready. They shouldn't have brought him to that phase, 15%, without, waiting before they are ready with an artifact call, waiting before they'd killed everything else. And that's it. That's the trial. A bit of fun and pretty chill, to be honest, as Paladin Healer, at least coming from a tank where you learn most of the mechanics. If you have any extra questions on the trial, mechanics-wise, or just in general how to play Paladin Healer, let me know. But my build pretty much covers it that I posted 2 months ago here. This has everything you need to beat this trial nice and easy. You got group buffs, you got maximum healing, and all the items you can use to fully get to the pinnacle of endgame. But it's also a bit overkill. You don't need every single bit of item level. You don't need every single bit of stats. You can get by easily with less. My build in that replay was a bit scuffed. You may have noticed me running like the perfect weapons. That's not the best thing for the team. I could have been better off running the mastered work weapons, give them all 2% damage reduction and also outgoing damage. That would have been better, but I wanted to run the perfect weapons to get the extra damage modification. That's plus 250 because I only have Feywood. I don't have the Durgar ones, which have the modification of plus 200, so that would compensate. And also my stats were not the best, so I was relying on the perfect for the crit strike and crit severity, mainly because I was using insignias that were damage dealers and tanks, and they're not the best, so my ratings are a bit lower than they should be. But if you follow this build, you should have no problem getting all those sweet 90% plus extra benefits that will easily allow you to like fully shield the tank. So hopefully this was somewhat insightful. I'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.